a very special one-off edition of the KDFL Dynasty Football Podcast. It's me, Brett Steele, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. It is DraftKings number 3 sports bettor in the world, Mr. Tim Barker of TimBarkerBets.com. How are you doing, sir?
How you doing? Thanks for having me, Brett. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Obviously, with the season is 3 days away, starting with the Chiefs and Lions on Thursday evening. So we're wanting to kind of get in our right headspace from a betting perspective, and I could think of no better man to call on than Tim Barker, an old family friend. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this for us here. If you want to just start off, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and how Tim Barker Bets came to be.
Sure. Yeah, I started sports gambling probably 2006. I remember that's when I placed my first ever wager. And since then, over time, learned all the do's and don'ts, mostly just from experience and understanding what works, how to look at the lines, how to understand all the different facets of sports gambling and what to do to set yourself up for success each week, and looking at it more as a business model now, probably the last 5 years with all of the apps and all the accessibility that you have. I think there's 16 states now that offer where you can gamble in those specific states with your geolocation. I obviously do more with DraftKings, but still play a little bit with some of the others. And honestly, it's just been kind of a trial and error and taking the best of what I've come to see work for me and infiltrating that and helping others as well, with a community that we have that you can subscribe to, and get a lot of live interaction. That's a big thing now, is not just the pregame betting, but the in-game betting, right? And
Right.
if you have a gut on a team, like the Chiefs always do, right? They get down even 2-3 scores, perfect opportunity to get them at plus money, feeling confident they're going to come back and win. Where years ago, you just were taking a -3 and calling your bookie. And, the game has changed completely now with how things are set up.
All right. Yeah. So let's talk about that setting you up for success. We are notoriously, the hosts of this podcast are notoriously terrible gamblers with our picks. And I have to believe a good part of it has to be with not setting ourselves up for success. So if you could, we have the opening slate coming up on Sunday. I believe we have 8 games at the 1 o'clock hour, which is absolutely perfect for the Octabox that YouTube TV is bringing this year, as well as I believe 5 in the evening. So it's a perfect, week 1 setup. Take us through what you do to set yourself up for success before the games kick off Sunday.
Yeah, so each week, especially when you get into buys and things like that, right? You're going to have 14 to 16 games every week starting on Thursday. One game Thursday, one game Monday. And as you get later in the year, things can change a little bit. But what I always like to do is figure out first, where do I have the most strength in the line, right? So looking at the lines, you're looking at this Lions Chiefs game, for example. It's 2.5. 3. It's going to go back and forth all week and probably fluctuate between 3.5. It probably won't go above that, and as low as 2, depending on the action during the week. Regardless of how you feel about one game, you have to look at, okay, between Thursday and Monday night, where are my top 3 to 5 plays? And then how can I maximize what I feel I have an advantage where Vegas has essentially messed up? Right? Where did they get it wrong that I felt like they get it wrong? I think too many times what happens is we look at a line and, I'll give you an example. Jaguars Colts. Why is that line 5? Why is it not
Right.
6.5? Why is it not 7? Why is it 5? It's 5 because they are begging people to bet the Jags. Why would you
Right.
not? Can you find me somebody this week that's going to take the Colts money line at home? Richardson quarterback. Those are
Right.
the bets that Vegas is counting on everybody playing the Jags, right? Everybody's going to play the Jags, but it's still the first game of the year. There's a lot of unknowns. It's an away game. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can happen, right? Late backdoor cover, all sorts of stuff. If you find yourself going after the obvious picks,
Mm-hmm.
I think more times than not, you're going to lose because there's
Right.
always going to be that one game in that parlay that gets you, or there's going to be several things that can happen that are just unexpected. And we see it every week in the NFL where there's a 12-point underdog that wins outright or that gives a
Right.
team they had no business being with a close game. And so you have to always keep in mind there's no sure things, there's no locks in the NFL. In
Right.
college, it's a little bit different. You're talking about professional athletes that every guy on those other teams that you think, the Cardinals are going to be terrible this year. There's still playmakers and there's still guys on
Right.
that team that are there for a reason. So I think you have to look at the whole slate and try to make sure that you are staying within what you feel are your strongest gut plays. When you start reaching and you start betting just to bet on a certain
Mm-hmm.
game, you're going to get in trouble. And that's what Vegas wants you to do, right? You're going to
Right.
get up $300-400 and you're going in this Sunday night game and you really weren't planning on betting the Sunday night game. And now you're betting the Sunday night game because it's the only thing on, right? And then, I
Right.
picked the wrong side. And next thing you know, your profit just went down to 250. So you have to stay within your plan. And, I even, I have a notebook. I write everything down. Here's my strongest plays. And then if you have a reach or you have something you're bringing into a money line parlay or something like that, always bring that into what your strongest play is instead of saying, well, I'm just going to put a 3 or 4 team parlay together for $15 and try to hit a lottery,
Right.
right? That's what
Right.
so many people do. And in talking to, I've said at Super Bowls with the CFOs of DraftKings, FanDuel, et cetera, and they will tell me that 80% of all plays in sports are parlays. That should
That's
tell you
wild.
something.
You're right.
80%, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Speaking of betting just to bet, I was on the bad end of that Penn State touchdown for no reason against their VU. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
fully
think
aware of that.
yeah, going for two, I think reignited some fire in
Yeah.
that sideline.
You can't bust
Yeah,
out the ring around the rosy when you're down. I fully blame the ring
yeah,
around the rosy on that.
yeah,
Um, but so you hit on a couple things. Um, just betting just to bet, not having a game plan, falling for the easy for the easy trap. I used to always say, if you look at Vegas, does that look like a city that was built by giving away money? It does. I don't think so. So,
right.
what are there any other common mistakes that you see novice bettors, such as myself, make?
Well, I touched on the parlay thing.
Yeah.
I never play anything over than if it's on spreads, especially anything over a
Right.
3-team spread parlay. Now, if you're talking
Okay.
about money lines, I might get
Okay.
into 4 or 5 teams, right? But you got to remember that's plus 500 for a reason when you go with a 3-team
Right.
spread. I mean, that is a tough thing
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish. The other so staying away from the parlays, I think is critical, and not using it as a lottery, but looking at it as, all right, I've got these games like you're talking about with NFL. I've got these games at 1. I've got these games at 4:30. I've got a Sunday night game I really like. I've got a Monday night game I kind of like. Okay, well, what if I tied in my favorite 2 games on the money line at 4:30 with the night game, knowing I feel really good about the night, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
just say I'm going to take my top 3 games at 1 o'clock for $100 each, all separate. I win 2 or 3, I'm playing with profit. Then I
Right.
can put the $100 I've gotten profit on a 2-team parlay at 4:30. And then if I win that, I'll take half my winnings and put it on my strongest play of what all week straight up. Right.
Okay.
And then if you
Right.
stick to your guns on that, and I can always accept losing a bet for me personally that I've said all week, man, this is where I feel I have the strongest action. This is my gut shot. I feel no way this spread is going to be beat. And if you lose, you lose, but you didn't get yourself in a tailspin that so many people
Right.
do, where they
Right.
reach and they lose and they double down on their favorite. Then they lose that. Then Monday night, they're clawing back, betting something they shouldn't bet. If you can't take it out of the window and throw it, down the interstate, don't bet.
Right.
Right. But so many people find themselves doing that, where every week they're playing a Hail Mary on Monday night to cover the tailspin. So that's what I try to tell people, just to stay away from that thought process and stick to a strategized plan. And if you win 60+% of what you went in with, you're going to net money. And that's a
Right.
great thing, right?
Yeah, because the sports better 53% winner is considered great, right? It's a very,
Yeah.
very thin margin window. You don't have to, I mean, it's 53%, I think I heard, or something like that is
Yeah,
excellent considered. Okay. Okay.
it is. Yeah.
So okay, so we talked about setting you up for success. We talked about some common mistakes that we see. Let's talk about what you use to determine your bets. Are you a model guy? Are you a field guy? Are you a little bit of both? Go through that process.
Yeah. I think it helps to start with some numbers, some analytics that you can determine what matters, in your own mind. But things I look at are things like number of first downs a team is obtaining against a certain type of defense, right? Matchups
Okay.
to me are critical. Matchups are critical. I was hammering on my site to everybody, in this Florida Utah game, recent game. So this will probably resonate with a lot of your
Right.
viewers. Everyone, oh, Florida, new coach, Napier, all this stuff. And I'm saying, guys, I could care less that Utah's quarterback is out. I mean, they end up playing their third string guy a majority of the game. They have an underrated defense. They should have crushed Florida last year. They fumbled the ball 2 times
Right.
at red zone on the road and still almost won the game. They're at home. They never lose at home in a night game. I can't remember last time Utah lost at home in a night game. And they're coming in fresh. They've had all season to prepare. I gave out under 20.5 in Florida total points. I gave out under for the total in the game, and I gave out Utah money line. And I looked at matchups. I knew going in there was no receiver for Florida that's going to get free on those D-backs. Right. And you're going to have a guy that I saw at Wisconsin come in there and have to throw with pressure in his face. I just knew it wasn't happening. It might happen a couple of times, and they got going a little bit first part of the game. But they're an inexperienced young team that showed who they were. Yeah, and they made a ton of mistakes. So that's I look at all those factors, all those things go through my head. Back to the NFL, things like passing yards a certain type of quarterback has against a certain type of defense. Number of first downs obtained in a game are critical in NFL. College, not so much, but first downs, it's all because you got kickers that can hit it from 60+ now. Mm-hmm. So if you can get 3 first downs in the NFL, you're putting points on the board, right? It's the 3 and outs that kill you with field position. And so those things are really the matchups. And then I look at in my, kind of catalog of my own data, watching games, I can visualize what a certain team is going to do against certain matchups. Back to the Super Bowl last year, Chiefs and Eagles. 80% of the public was on the Eagles. I was on the Chiefs because I saw earlier in the year several times where the Eagles faced mobile quarterbacks that could sling it, and they struggled. And that's what Mahomes did. He got out of the pocket the entire game. He wasn't running for his life like he was in Tampa, and he was able to hit his guys. And that's really all it took, right? And I took the over in the Chiefs. I knew the Eagles were going to score. I had no doubt, but it was going to be a gunslinging fest, and they outscored it. And that's what it came down to. So those are just different things that I kind of look at and using, again, kind of what I've seen over the course of time, and along with some analytics.
Okay. So I figured it was going to be a mix of the two, as most, good approaches are. Now, I'm looking at something here right now. This blows my mind. We haven't talked that much about how big are you into the futures? Because I know when you're using models and things like that, it's more of a week to week type of deal for the most part, I would think, if it's drilled down stats like that. What about futures? Are there any futures out there that you like this year? Is there a certain area of future bets that you focus on? Maybe win totals, division winners, awards? what do you look for in that? And are there any that you
Yeah.
particularly like this year?
Yeah, I like in NFL, I like taking over win totals. I think
Okay.
that's like, critical, especially teams that are going to be on the edge of making those extended playoff slots. Now, if there's seven, I think you get a lot of teams that traditionally in the past would be 6-6 or 6-7, and you wouldn't see them making a late push. And now they have that chance to hit that seventh slot. The two plays that I really like this year, I like the Chargers over win total.
Okay.
I think they're an underrated team that is not getting much love at all. You got obviously the Chiefs, and then there's been all this transition with the Broncos and the Raiders in that division,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of getting all the press and flying under the radar is, in my mind, the most talented receiving corps in the league. They had some great draft picks, and they've got, I think, a top 10 quarterback in Justin
Mm-hmm.
Herbert. I think he just stands back there in the pocket and lets it fly. I like
All
him
right.
a lot. So that for over win total. I also like the Vikings, another
Okay.
team no one's talking about. They won 13 games last year, and they're plus money to win the division because everybody's darling this year is the Lions. And the Lions very well could go into Kansas City and win that first game. I mean, that's very
All right.
possible. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams. They're going to wreak havoc with their defense. They have a very controlled, but being in that division, the Bears are a little bit better, I think, than people think. That's another one to look at. But I really like it plus money, the Vikings.
Okay. Okay. Let me bounce a couple off of you that see
Okay.
if you have the same mindset I do. Obviously, you can see I'm a huge Falcons fan, but those
Yeah.
numbers on that division outright winners are pretty terrible to me. So I feel like all of them. The Saints at plus 100, the Falcons at
Yeah.
plus 200. I think the Panthers are plus 500. That's probably the most appetizing one of the four, and the Bucks at plus 1,000. To me, that screams just stay away because it's not worth it. It's not worth the investment. I feel like because you're not to get that right because that's a total crapshoot of a division. So at least that's how I feel right now. So to get that right, say I get it right and the Falcons win the division, plus 200. That doesn't feel like it doesn't seem to
Right.
match the right call. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that your approach
I,
on that?
the only thing I would tell you is that is, we all know that's the worst division in football by a long shot.
Well, I mean,
The
like
second,
yeah.
yeah, the second worst division is definitely the Central in the AFC, Titans and Jags. I put that
South.
just
It's the South as well. Both
slightly.
Souths are
I'm sorry, I
terrible.
said
Yeah.
Central, South.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, with Titans, Jags, Colts, Texans. Yeah, that's
I
right
know
there
both
with them.
Souths are terrible right now. Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
So with that said, I would sprinkle a little bit maybe on the Falcons just for fun. I would rather take their over win total. I
Yeah.
think
I thought about that.
they're a team because the NFC is so weak in general. I think that seventh spot goes
Yeah.
to either the Falcons or Seahawks. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I see it. I think the Niners are going to run away. They should run away with that division. The Rams is all predicated on Cooper Kupp's health.
Right.
And
Which is getting more and
if
more
he's,
serious now. Yeah.
yeah, if he's not healthy, they're probably the worst team in that division. If he is healthy, they can win the division. I don't think
Right.
anybody's beating the Niners, but crazier things have happened. So when I look at the Falcons' schedule, and you're looking at around an 8 win total, if they win 9 or 10 games, and you got to remember 6 of their games are against weak teams,
Right.
um, I would take a shot at even money on over win total as well.
No, it's a perfect as a Falcons fan who has been through, the worst things imaginable to my team. It seems, and I don't like to touch my favorite team because of the obvious biases. But it seems as if they have the easiest strength of schedule. Them and the Saints have the two easiest strengths of schedule in the
Yep.
NFL. You already mentioned they play that division. They were, I think they were second in the league in one-score games last year. I think I want to say Kansas City, but I could be wrong about that. I know they were second because I shared that stat not that long ago. And the division that we play, that the Falcons play, is the AFC South, which is the other division that you noted was quite terrible. So it seems as if, and it's all on Ritter. We get that, but I don't think Ritter's going to be even put in a situation where he can screw it up. Honestly, don't. So we'll
he
see.
won't. My not to burst anybody's bubble. I do think Heineke is the quarterback by week 6.
I could see it. Yeah.
I think he's the quarterback by week 6. I think it all depends on that offensive line, because if Bijan Robinson gets going and they're able to run the ball, that makes Ritter better.
Yeah.
If he can't run the ball effectively, he's at 60 yards a game and not 90 yards a game. That's going to force Ritter into 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 6.
And that's where we're in dicey
He's not
situations.
built for that.
Right.
Whereas I feel like Heineke is. He can play because he's used to that. He's used to running for his life in Washington and making something out of nothing.
Right.
I think he's a better decision maker. I saw him in preseason make some really talented throws that I was like, man, that guy, that's who needs to be the quarterback. But I've got probably more film in my head on him versus Ritter. I did not watch. I did not watch but one start to finish Falcons game last year, to be honest with you. So
you're lucky. Yeah, you're lucky.
I don't have. Yeah, between you on Saturdays watching WVU and Falcons Sundays, I feel like your wife should bring out like a tray of meats and cheeses with a 12-pack every Sunday to say, "I'm sorry, I know it's gonna be tough." Yeah, it's been a tough weekend again.
She takes the more of the why you do this to yourself. Exactly. But okay. Okay, one other future, and then we can move along to week 1. I just want to ask you this because I don't understand what I'm missing here on this future. Comeback player of the year, Damar Hamlin at minus 285. That I can't. Once he made the team, because there was a little bit of speculation that he might be a little bit iffy on making the team. Once he makes the team, this seems to be, I know 285 is a steep price, but this seems to be essentially free money right here. Am I missing something? Is this a trap, or is it like, I feel like you could bet everything on this because they want the story. They want the head. I mean, not to make light of the very serious situation, but it is literally impossible to come back more from what he come back from than anything. Right. Like, this is Alex Smith's leg injury.
I have not seen that. I just for, tell me who are some of the other potential candidates.
I mean, you go Damar Hamlin at minus 285. The next two are Tua and Russell Wilson at plus 2,000. How you give Russell Wilson comeback player of the year just from being bad is amazing to me. It's usually at least an injury like Tua.
Yeah.
John Mechie at 2,800.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Mechie's not bad at 28, but Tua would make a little sense. I think that's your only possibility. But I think it would be more alarming if the Damar Hamlin was at like minus 160. That's where I would be like, is this a trap?
What he's thinking,
The fact that it's 285, it'll probably be 300 or 400 by week 3 or 4. It doesn't hurt to put, if you, again, let's just say the first week, if you subscribe to timbargerbus.com and you make $1,000 like you will, then you take that 1,000, you're going to make an easy 300. Yeah, you'll make an easy 300 on Damar Hamlin. So that's my guess.
That's what. I mean, I'm like, wow, because I thought once he made the team, I thought it would go from minus 300 to minus 8, 9, something ridiculous. Because again, I think this is, so I wanted to get your thoughts on that. All right, so make sure I got everything here. I don't know how much time you've got to. I know you were busy with college football kicking off and getting all that stuff ready.
Sure.
Do you have any week 1 plays that stand out to you? And I'm going to bounce off one of mine off you when you're done going through yours and tell me what you think. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I know everyone's anxious about the Thursday night game, and look, it'll be a battle. I think the smartest bet in that game is the Lions money line. Even though I'm not a huge believer in them winning the division, and making the Super Bowl and all these crazy predictions that people have put on them. If you're going to bet it at that, either get it at 3.5 or 4 when the line shifts, when all the money comes in on the Chiefs, or just take them straight up on the money line and get good plus money for a game that I feel like is going to come down to the last possession. If it
Okay.
does come down to the Chiefs having the ball at the end of the game, that's not a good spot to be in. Only up 4 points and you're a 2.5 line. That's the thing you got to watch out for.
Okay.
You don't want golf necessarily, having to drive the field and win the game for you in those scenarios. But I'll tell you, for the 1 o'clock games, I feel like is easy money. I'll call it the purple parlay. Vikings
Okay.
and Ravens money line parlay,
Okay.
both at home playing. I'm like, this right here. Okay. So 2 teams, you're getting very close to even money, great expectations on both. I think the Vikings have even more arsenal this year with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson versus Thielen, that was targeted hundreds of times the last 2 years and has been injured so much. He might be finally healthy with the Panthers this year, but Jordan Addison
Right.
could play. And you get,
Right.
he is going to see so many single coverage looks that he's not used to that, right? He's used to double coverage in college every play the last 3 years. Justin Jefferson's going to have a safety over top of him every play.
Right.
Addison's going to be one-on-one in the slot on the outside every single time. So if Cousins is anything like he was last year, I feel like the Ravens, that's a great play. I also think the Bills -2.5 against the
That's
darling Jets.
right. I was
The
wondering about
Jets,
that.
they
Yeah.
everybody's on. I think that's a win total I would take under if I had to bet it. I'm not going to give that out as like a play,
Right.
but I think we're counting a lot on a team that's never played together to show up week 1 and gel and be really good against an extremely tenured, comfortable team.
Right.
On the road, favored. Why are they favored? Right.
Right.
Again, those are the lines you got to look at. Vegas is dying for people to buy that to 3 or 3.5 and take the Jets at home. Whereas I think, the Bills are favorites for a reason. They're the better team. They've got experience together, and I feel like they win straight up.
Okay. Yeah. So the Jets is more of they're the popular team. You got Hard Knocks, you have Rodgers, it's New York. It's people dying for this team to be good again. So you can kind of take advantage of that emotion, is your thinking, correct?
And that happens a lot throughout the year. In anything you look at, remember that the line is only starting and is there to encourage equal play on each side.
Right.
That's what everyone needs to remember. It's there to encourage the play. It's
Right.
not there to say this is the all knoweth number.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now you kind of got me there because here's what I do every week, and I get made fun of it some, and you got to tell me if this is a sucker play or not. Because it's
Okay.
amazing that you picked the 2 that you said. I usually do a parlay of 3 heavy favorites, money line teams. So like
Okay.
this one, I would do the Vikings. I love them at home, like you said. I was going to do the Ravens because they're getting the Texans and Stroud on the road first start, and D'Amico Ryan's first coaching debut. And for the same reason, I was going to throw in the Commanders hosting the Cardinals. And that ends up, if you bet all 3 of those, you end up at plus 123. So that's
I'm for that. What you have to stay away from, Brett, are road teams and interdivisional games that know each
right.
other really
I
well,
agree.
a lot of tape on each other. I like those 3 because they meet none of those criteria,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I cannot in any imaginable situation see the Ravens losing that football game.
Right. Right.
That's another guy I can't believe is not on that list of he would be my other comeback player of the year if
Oh,
there was
he was there at 2,500.
okay.
He was next to Frost.
Well, that would be my hedge because I think if he's
Yeah.
healthy with the weapons he has now, that's somebody to look for. But regardless, I like your strategy. I just think you have to be diligent in not reaching for a team on there that doesn't, that if it's interdivisional, if
You're
it's
right. I
a
stay
road
away. Yeah.
game, always look at weather,
Yeah.
things like that that can affect the whole game. So, as long as
It,
you
it
kind of dig really deep into it, I think you're okay.
it's almost similar to a strategy you would take in an eliminator pool if you're trying to play it safe. Like you stay away from the road, you stay away from division games for the most part if you can, at least at the beginning. Another strategy that I had a lot because I do the parlay, I do heavy favorite parlays and parlay it to where it gets to be close to even money. It's kind of I feel like it's
Yeah.
cowardly in a way, but
No, that's
you know,
great. I love it. Yeah.
the other thing I did with it was I made a lot of money on the Broncos last year because I would slide the line. If you're a bad team but a good defense, I would slide the line to where instead of getting 10 and a half, you were getting 20 and a half and parlay it with that because the defense isn't going to let them get blown out for the most part.
Got it.
That was the
Got it. Yeah.
strategy I had. But again, I'm
Yeah,
quite
I think the
terrible at
only
this.
game maybe they got blown out, I remember was the 49ers. That
Yep.
was the only one that, yeah. But other than that, you're right. I mean, that's a solid look. I mean, the Steelers are a lot like that,
Yeah.
right? They're hanging around in every game and they're waiting on their quarterback to do something. That's typical Steelers team post,
Yeah.
Big Ben. So if you go with that strategy, the other thing I would look at doing is try to um, maybe look at when you feel like it's going to be a tight game, right? I mean, it's a great example. Let's use Chiefs and Lions.
Okay.
If you feel like that's coming down to a one score game on DraftKings pre-game, you could take and FanDuel as well. You could take plus points on each side. So you could take plus 13 and a half or plus 10 and a half Lions, plus 10
Oh
and a
wow.
half, plus 13 and a half. Right. So you're basically saying the game's going to come down to a 7 or point less outcome. Then you hit that with some lower alternate player props. So Kelsey, instead of his normal over 60 yards, you get it at 30. It's minus 200 or minus 300, but unless it's crazy, he's going to get more than 30 yards. You know that St. Brown is going to get more than 30 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you hit those two player props at minus 300, minus 300. The alt spread on each team is minus 400, minus 400. And now you're at plus 150 on a four teamer that all you're basically rooting for is a close game. And then let's say that the game is a 10-point game and the Chiefs are driving at the end of the game to bust that plus 10 and a half lines. You can take on the live line for half your bet to cover it up in a worst case scenario. They kick a late field goal. You could take the Chiefs minus 10 and a half or minus 12 and a half, or even middle it, take it minus 9.5. It ends at 10 and you hit
Yeah.
both ways. So
Right.
I like doing those in games where I don't have, this is a scenario that where I don't have an absolute feeling. I want to bet the game. I want to watch the game, and I feel comfortable saying that it's going to be a one score down to the last possession tight finish. That's a great strategy to use.
Perfect. Perfect. That is extremely useful. All right. Tim, anything else? Anything else before we close out here?
No, I think again, just reiterating, instead of using the sites, using this as a lottery, to use it as a business plan. This could, it's fun, it's entertainment at its finest, where you're making money on a Saturday or Sunday watching stuff you're already going to watch anyway. There's no better feeling in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better feeling than riding the roller coaster and finishing the day out ahead, right, with your
All
buddies,
right.
and have your team wins and you win the bet.
All
That's the
right.
greatest feeling ever. But just be mindful to always keep a somewhat of a business approach to it, of banking what you win, taking half that, roll it into the next week. Always save yourself back instead of the tailspin chasing and all of that people get into, that I hate to see, because it ends up, causing some problems, and that's
Yeah.
nothing that it should be for. So
Right. Right. Perfect. Okay, now I know you're on Instagram at Tim Barker Bets. I know you have timbarkerbets.com. Is there anywhere else that we can find you and kind of follow along the journey through this season and onward?
Yeah, so Twitter and Instagram, Tim Barker Bets, as you said, and then timbarkerbets.com. You can subscribe. I've got 3 different packages on there. Again, with the higher tier packages, the 2 highest ones, you can get in-game interaction. Went 12-5. That's 70% win total this past week from Thursday to now. I've got Duke plus 14 that I took earlier in the week tonight. I think Duke holds serve a little bit with Clemson and plays them close. I think their quarterback's a little underrated, potentially even better than Clemson's quarterback.
Okay.
So that's the play I gave out tonight, but that's a free one. I don't know you guys when this comes out, but go back and look at that one. But yeah, 12-5 first week, off to a great start. I'd love for some of your viewers and listeners to subscribe, and happy to take the journey with them.
Absolutely perfect. That's going to do it for us here. I want to thank Tim Barker for joining us again. Of course, we're going to come out, as we always do, on Thursday morning with the season kicking off. So with week 1 KDFL breakdown, we're going to do our NFL predictions as well. So one last time, I want to thank Tim Barker for joining us here. And you can follow the KDFL podcast on Twitter with @KDFL podcast. And I'm Brett Steele, and we will see you next week, or actually in 3 days, right here on the KDFL Fantasy Football Dynasty Podcast.